How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
My fellow Americans, welcome. We have 6 days of this hell election left. Thank you for joining me. Boy, I bet you know what we got to talk about first today, because the amount of media coverage to try to pretend that what was said was not said is actually kind of wild to me. The level of coverage and non-coverage, the level of excuse making out there is it's absurd. It's absurd. I need to start on this garbage comment from Joe Biden and actually put it in a different context first. Last night on the National Mall, Kamala Harris gave what was supposed to be her closing argument. It was her final big speech to the nation, asking people for the vote. And instead, today, everyone is talking about Joseph Robinette Biden and his statement last night that completely overshadowed Kamala Harris.
I just want to play a quick clip of that.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable.
That's Joe Biden. That is Joe Biden in full context. That is Joe Biden calling Donald Trump's supporters garbage. That's Joe Biden doing that. Now, the media's spin today, of course, is that, well, he didn't really mean that. He didn't really say that. He actually had an implied apostrophe. An implied apostrophe is what they're calling it. And I'm not making that up, by the way. Reporters, Jonathan Lemire from Politico, being chief among them, is actually arguing that there was an implied apostrophe. And what Joe Biden meant was Donald Trump's supporters' insults of Puerto Rico. But that's not what Joe Biden said. And any member of the media is actually spinning for Joe Biden if they're taking that position, because Joe Biden clearly said the only garbage he sees are Donald Trump supporters. There was no apostrophe there. And by the way, it wouldn't make sense in the context of how he talked about it if there was an apostrophe there. And I want to play this one more time for you. This is Joe Biden. We'll cut out Anderson Cooper here.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
That's Joe Biden's statement. It doesn't make any logical sense. And for Democrats to say there's an implied apostrophe there is to say that he's out of his mind and can't really talk. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters, period. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American, period. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been. I will note, to their credit, the Associated Press is not accepting the spin from Jonathan Lemire of Politico and other Democrats. This is how they reported it in the headline, and this is the actual headline from the Associated Press. Well, I would say that, except their website's suddenly offline. Biden suggests Trump supporters are garbage. The president said, quote, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been." So Kamala Harris gave her closing argument speech last night on the Mall in Washington, D.C., and nobody's talking about it today. I looked, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, CBS, CNN, or NBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico. Nope, they're all, did Joe Biden call half the country garbage? Some of them are like, yeah, he did. He says he didn't mean it that way, but he did. And others are like, he didn't say that. There was an apostrophe. But nobody's talking about Kamala Harris' speech. By the way, to Jonathan Lemire. Jonathan Lemire is a analyst on MSNBC, and he's the chief White House correspondent for Politico. He is of the left and very clearly of the left. Back on March 16th, 2024, Donald Trump gave a speech in Michigan. Donald Trump said in his speech in Michigan that if he's not elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the auto industry in America, bloodbath for America. The economy is going to be wiped out. Members of the press, including Jonathan Lemire of Politico, took the bloodbath comment that was clearly about the economy of the auto industry and essentially said Donald Trump is promising death and destruction in America if he doesn't win. This is actually Jonathan Lemire, who attacked Joe Biden, who defended Joe Biden, who said there was an applied apostrophe there. This is him after Donald Trump's comments.
Capitol, but he's not done. He's also threatened that there would be a bloodbath if he weren't elected president.
Yesterday, or day before yesterday, Jeff Bezos wrote in the Washington Post, in the annual public survey about trust and reputation, journalists and the media have regularly fallen near the very bottom, often just above Congress. But in this year's Gallup poll, we've managed to fall below Congress. Our profession is now the least trusted of all. Something we're doing is clearly not working. Most people believe the media is biased. Anyone who doesn't see this is paying scant attention to reality, and those who fight reality lose. Reality is an undefeated champion. It would be easy to blame others for our long and continuing fall in credibility and therefore decline in impact, but a victim mentality will not help. Complaining is not a strategy. We must work harder to control what we can control to increase our credibility. I would start with, don't spin the president's remarks when you're trying to spin Donald Trump's remarks. You take Donald Trump out of context, and then you willfully take Joe Biden out of context to minimize what he said. This is what Joe Biden said.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
That's Joe Biden. I didn't edit it. It's not taken out of context. That's Joe Biden. The only garbage I see out there is his supporters. And you know, last night, some Kamala Harris supporters came out, some of her major Silicon Valley supporters says, that's an understatement. They're worse than garbage. They understood before they realized the damage that was being done. Mark Preston, great guy on CNN, made a great point about Joe Biden's statement.
You know, I'm of the mindset that if you say it, you might as well just embrace it. And I do think that that's a problem for
We're
Democrats.
going to ask our strategist over here in a second.
Shocking, that I would say that. No, but realistically, like, I do think if he said, listen, yeah, I do mean all those racist supporters of Donald Trump. Yeah, I do think that they're terrible. I think that people would look at the Democratic Party a little bit different. I think, look, I do think that the Democratic Party in general doesn't look like they are strong enough, and they will always back off of things. And I think that when Joe Biden backs off of saying what he really believes, I don't think that's a good look.
Yeah, I actually think Mark Preston is absolutely right there. You say it, you mean it. Actually, what Joe Biden meant was Nazis. The Democrats for weeks now have been calling Republicans Nazis. That's how Joe Biden misspoke. There was no implied apostrophe there, where there was an implied swastika. He just should have said Nazi. That's what the Democrats have been saying for weeks. It boggles the mind for Democrats to walk back Joe Biden calling Republicans Nazi garbage after weeks of calling them Nazis. This is Alex Thompson from Politico, one of the only reporters who has been consistently reporting on Joe Biden's mental failings over the last 4 years. This is Alex Thompson from Axios.
No one here at this table knows what Joe Biden meant, unless someone here has talked to Joe Biden when he made those comments. And the sad reality is that they were indecipherable because this president is no longer able to coherently and consistently articulate a message.
Does make you wonder who's in charge these days, because Alex Thompson is right. Here's the thing. Be very honest with you. I don't think Joe Biden did intend to call Donald Trump's supporters garbage because he wants Donald Trump to lose, and calling Donald Trump's supporters garbage will just fire them up and maybe turn some undecided voters towards Donald Trump to rebuke the Democrats for their hostility. He wants to stop Donald Trump. Now, there are conspiracy theories out there, of which I'm happy to cajole, who say maybe he really does want Kamala Harris to lose and to prove he could be the only one to do it. Look, I'm not going to dissuade you from that. I love the conspiracy theory. But I don't actually think he meant to say that they're garbage, but he did, and that's the point. He did say it because at the bottom of it, I actually think Joe Biden believes anyone who supports Donald Trump is garbage. I don't think he meant to say it, but I think he said what he actually believed. I think he did. Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, was one of the very first Democrats asked to respond on CNN last night with Caitlin Collins.
Until now, Caitlin, so I'm kind of giving you my fresh reaction to it. I would never insult the good people of Pennsylvania or any Americans, even if they chose to support a candidate that I didn't support. I think the real issue here is Donald Trump and his inability to simply say comments like that are wrong, to simply stand up for his fellow Americans. He is incapable of doing that. When he had the keys to the White House before, he didn't do it. He separated people out. He divided people. He's promised more of the same. And that's why I think he's dangerous. And that's
So there's Josh Shapiro, and now Kamala Harris was on the tarmac this morning. Remember, she wanted to talk about last night's speech. Instead, she's got to do damage control.
Are you concerned about what impact this may have on voters, on the divisiveness of the election, and whether or not it's going to dissuade some people from supporting you because of your affiliation with the president and this administration?
I've been very clear with the American public. I respect the challenges that people face. I respect the fact that we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and that most people want a president that understands that gets that, and approaches their role of leadership that way. I've been very clear from my earliest years as a prosecutor.
Kamala Harris trying to do damage control in this. Christian Soltis Anderson, a great pollster out there, was on CNN discussing the fallout.
Idea that, I mean, there are a lot of people out there who don't, feel like, well, I might support Trump. I may have my own reasons for doing that, who may be alienated by a remark like this.
There is nothing more powerful for someone than to hear a compliment. Someone likes me. And Donald Trump's stronghold on Republican voters is because he came around and said, the world tells you that you're racist, the world tells you that you're backward, the world tells you that you're Neanderthals, and I don't think that. I like you. I respect you, and I want to make sure that you have power. And that's why he's been able to so strongly hold on to Republicans. That's why this comment is so potentially damaging. It is bulletin board material. It is the sort of thing where you go, see, they really don't like me, and it motivates you in the same way that deplorables did, in the same way that for Mitt Romney, 47%, only 47% of the country is contributing that kind of comment, in the same way that the Puerto Rican garbage comments from Madison Square Garden. When people feel like that candidate and their side doesn't like me, you will go to the mat for the side that you think does.
Yes. And think about that Puerto Rico comment. Here's a small montage. It starts with Joe Biden and then goes into how the media treated the Puerto Rico garbage comment from a comedian, not from Donald Trump.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Basically calling Puerto Ricans trash.
The most repulsive racial jokes about Latinos.
Disgusting and hateful.
So incredibly crude.
Frankly, just too X-rated to play here.
Extremely vile so-called jokes.
And that was from a comedian, not from Donald Trump. This is a statement from the president of the United States of America, the Biden, in the Biden-Harris administration, who is speaking on the same night that the Harris of the Biden-Harris administration is speaking, and completely overshadowed her remarks. It was a damaging thing for Joe Biden to do. Probably why Kamala Harris doesn't want him on the campaign trail with her. And I suspect more people will be offended by Joe Biden's remarks than by a comedian's remarks. Hello there. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. Philip, if you're listening, it would have been helpful had you told me that at some point prior to me coming back from commercial break. Okay. There's nothing I can do, so forget it all. Sorry, technical difficulties here that I'm only finding out about. I got to move on. We are not going to be sending out a video today because I'm not going to deal with it. Okay. The phone number, 877-973-7425, if you want to be on the program. Y'all, I got to tell you, I actually do kind of think that the Biden remark is going to do some real damage. I think that the Biden remark is something that when you have the president of the United States of America at the very end of a campaign refer to half the country as garbage, I think that actually matters. I think that actually shakes up the race in a way that few things do. The power of the presidency to, in such a way, alienate people. And remember, and this goes back to Kristen Soltis Anderson's point, Hillary Clinton referring to people as deplorable galvanized those people to oppose her. Mitt Romney talking about the 47% galvanized people to oppose Mitt Romney. He came across as cruel and heartless in 2012. Democrats, I know at the time, I was on CNN at the time, and I was trying to defend Romney's remarks. And in the all-fair conversations with Democratic strategists, and Republican strategists too, by the way, they were talking about the data. And that remark landed so poorly. Remember, it was said supposedly off the record, it was a waiter at the event who recorded him. And that remark landed so terribly. And Republicans and Democrats alike saw a shift in the polling away from Mitt Romney. Same with Hillary Clinton's deplorable remarks. And now same with this situation for Joe Biden. I'm pretty sure the same thing's going to happen. Now, I got to tell you about Vision computers, y'all. Vision saved me last night. My son is working on a school project, and he decided he's got a Mac laptop, which I'm proficient dealing with, but this is his big GPU in the computer from Vision Computers, his gaming PC. He wanted to do the project, the power and everything else on it, and he could not figure something out. Now, you need to understand, my son, can get very frustrated. He knows not to punch his computer. He knows, but sometimes he gets really frustrated with his computer, and instead he called Vision, and Vision took care of him last night and saved the day, and he was able to get his project done. They talked him through what he needed. That's the sort of service everybody gets, not just me. You call them at 404-COMPUTE. They can build your computer, but then they give you this 5-star support where 15 seconds or less, you call the number. They take care of it. They can do it for your company as well. You don't have to get a computer from Vision to get the tech support. Call them at 404-COMPUTE. Tell Vision I sent you. 404-COMPUTE. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. At the top of the next hour, I happen to know the Secretary of State for one of the swingiest of all the swing states, Brad Raffensperger of Georgia. The state of Georgia has redone the way voting is tabulated, and in the process of redoing their voting tabulations, they have been able to speed up the process. And so I want to talk to him about what that process looks like, as so many people now more and more are worried about the state of play for the election, and worried about how quickly the voting can be counted, and are we going to wait days or weeks or months even for the presidency? We'll get to that. First, however, I want to do this. And Philip, I'll try to fix video here. We're having gremlins of the machines today, folks, and I don't know why. So let me try video. Okay. Let's talk about 6 days left. Because when you are 6 days left, this is the ultimate problem for the Democrats. In fact, let me I'm gonna do something on the fly here for you. I am a professional. I promise. Occasionally, if I can get access to this, and it looks like I can, I want to do something real quick. It's something on occasion I have the capability of doing, and it all depends on internet bandwidth. The problem with Joe Biden's garbage people remark is that we're 6 days from the election. There are a class of people who will wait until Election Day or this week to vote, and they will be put off by a president of the United States referring to half of the nation as garbage. They just will. By virtue of most Americans being nice, they will. This is kind of reflected in the Tim Walz remarks. This is Tim Walz talking on CBS News about all the Nazi rhetoric that Democrats have used.
I want to get your reaction to the president's comments, but I want to put it into a larger context of your recent comment comparing the Sunday Trump rally to a Nazi rally. And I would also throw in there Obama's bitter clingers, guns and religion comment from a while back, the deplorable line from Hillary Clinton's campaign, and the way that Democrats are seen by some voters as disrespecting them. And I have to ask, does that undercut this closing message of unity from your campaign?
No, certainly not. And for Tony, for me, I've represented rural areas. I've represented Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Same thing with the vice president. Look, you saw a presidential speech last night at the Ellipse that is the best of America, one that's talking about unifying us, one that's talking about bringing folks to the table, one that the American tradition of disagreeing and debating, but still doing it in a respectful manner. And I think there's the frustration we've seen since January 6th, the frustration with Donald Trump's rhetoric of division. It does fire passions, and I think President Biden was very clear that he's speaking about the rhetoric we heard at that, so it doesn't undermine it. People are hungry to come back together. They're hungry to find a unifying message.
Except, despite his spin on that and cover for Joe Biden, not really. When you have the president of the United States of America calling people garbage. Now, I can't pull up all the audio feeds here. But here's what I can give you. So I've got all the major news networks pulled up on my screen. Let me tell you what I'm looking at. I got all the major news networks pulled up on my screen right now. On CNN, they're talking about the danger of putting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of health care if Trump gets elected. On Fox Business, they're talking about immigration and Kamala Harris. On MSNBC, they're talking about how bad Donald Trump is. On Newsmax, they're talking about Biden's remarks. On CNBC, they're talking about parental lack of confidence in teaching kids about finance. On Bloomberg News, they're talking about Joe Biden's comments. On C-SPAN, they're talking about Joe Biden's comments. Nobody's talking about Kamala Harris's closing remarks. More national news networks are talking about Joe Biden calling Trump supporters garbage than are talking about her closing arguments last night. I bet you didn't watch the speech. One, I bet you didn't care to watch the speech. And two, I bet it completely overshadowed the speech for you as well. The only major news network to give substantive coverage to today, of course, is MSNBC, and they're playing to the crowd. MSNBC is playing to the base. Now, what was so interesting about it is how it happened. This is Donald Trump on stage last night at his rally being interrupted by Marco Rubio.
So we're thrilled to be joined by some incredible people. I already mentioned Senator Marco Rubio. Marco, will you come up here, please? Come on. Good man, this one. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Marco. You want to say something? Go ahead. All
right. Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I have breaking news for you, Mr. President. You may not have heard this. Just moments ago, Joe Biden stated that our supporters are garbage. Are garbage. He's talking about the Border Patrol. He's talking about nurses. He's talking about teachers. He's talking about everyday Americans who love their country and want to dream big again and support you, Mr. President. And I hope their campaign is about to apologize for what Joe Biden just said. We are not garbage. We are patriots who love America. And thank you for running, Mr. President.
That's how it happened last night. Joe Biden's remarks happened during the Trump rally, and then Trump spoke about it.
So you have, remember Hillary, she said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right?
Listen, so that was the buzz. We're 6 days from the election, and Joe Biden opened his mouth. This, by the way, this is why Kamala Harris doesn't want Joe Biden on the campaign trail. Joe Biden was asked yesterday about being on the campaign trail. I don't have the video or the audio from it. He was asked by a print reporter who wrote about it, and Biden says, I've left my schedule open. They haven't asked. Poor doddering old fool that he is. They don't want him on the campaign trail. Now Harris is going to be taken off her message in order to respond to Biden. Now, this is part of her speech last night. She was on the Mall with the White House as her backdrop. Remember all the people who got upset with Donald Trump during COVID having the White House as his backdrop. They're perfectly fine with Kamala Harris doing it.
At the same time, we must acknowledge we are a nation of immigrants. And I will work with Congress to pass immigration reform, including an earned path to citizenship for hardworking immigrants like farm workers and our dreamers.
By the way, I don't know that one of your closing arguments being amnesty is probably the best thing when people are worried about the border, but that's what she wanted to do last night, and we're not even talking about that Kamala Harris essentially came out for amnesty last night in her speech. Instead, we're talking about Biden calling Trump supporters garbage. There are 6 days. Let me explain to you what you do in your 6 days. Starting this past Sunday, you'll have gotten all of the data from all the states that make it available, and almost every state does. The lists of the people who have voted early. The list of people who've already registered to vote. And what you'll do by state and then by county and then down to precinct level is you'll look and see who among our supporters have already voted and who haven't. And if you're not on the list, they're going to find you. They're going to knock on your door. They're going to call you. They're going to say, don't forget to vote. You can vote this week. If not, don't forget Election Day. Go vote. And then what they're going to do is they're going to look at all the people who haven't voted early, and they're going to look at the ones who are low propensity voters. They vote in general elections. They don't vote in primaries. They vote in presidential elections. They don't vote in midterms. They're going to see which of these people hasn't voted, but voted in the 2020 election or the 2016 election. And the Democrats are going to start working those people, saying, you don't want to vote for Donald Trump. He's a Nazi. You don't want to vote for Donald Trump. Did you know what he said about Puerto Rico? And the Republicans are going to be finding the same voters and saying, Joe Biden called Trump supporters garbage. Are you going to let that stand? Are you going to tolerate a president of the United States calling you garbage? Go vote for Trump. Or they're going to say, did you know Kamala Harris wants amnesty? You may not like Trump, but you don't have to vote for her. You can stay home. The parties are right now finding their voters who haven't voted to get them to the polls and finding the voters they're afraid will go vote and trying to convince them not to. And that's something you've got to be able to process in your mind. It is not unconstitutional. It is not illegal to convince a voter not to go vote. And if you're worried about a voter, you've got a Hispanic man in his 40s who works a blue-collar job. And the last time he showed up to vote was 2016. You, if you're a Democrat, do not want that man voting. You do not want him voting. You want to find him, and you want to tell him that Donald Trump calls Puerto Ricans garbage people. You want to tell him that. If you're a Republican, you want that man to vote, and you go find him and say Joe Biden called Trump supporters garbage. Half of Americans, Joe Biden, the president, called garbage. Don't you want to respond to that? Shouldn't you go vote against that? That's what they're doing. They're trying to stop people from voting now. They're trying to get their base and stop everybody else from voting. If you are an undecided voter right now and you're thinking of going to vote, neither party wants you to go vote at this point because you're the wild card. And they think things are pretty predictable. In fact, the trend lines for Donald Trump right now are actually pretty good. Here's Harry Hinton. Harry Hinton talking about the voter registration process in the country right now, that things actually, according to Hinton, look pretty good.
Just 28% of Americans, voters, think the country is going in the right direction, is on the right track. And I want you to put that into a historical perspective for you. Okay, what's the average percentage of the public that thinks that the country is on the right track when the incumbent party loses? It's 25%. That 25% looks an awful bit like that 28% up there. It doesn't look anything like this 42% doesn't look anything like this 28%. So the bottom line is, very few Americans think the country is on the right track at this particular point. It tracks much more with when the incumbent party loses than with it wins. In fact, I went back through history. There isn't a single time in which 28% of the American public thinks the country is going on the right track in which the incumbent party actually won.
Now, but it's more than that. It's also voter registration.
History for sure. Okay, registration numbers, Harry.
Yeah, Republicans have been registering voters in big, huge numbers. They have been gaining in party registration versus the Democrats in the swing states with party registration. We're talking Arizona. I think it's a 5-point. They've expanded their lead from 5 points from where it was back in 2020. How about Nevada? Big Republican registrations there. They like the early vote. How about North Carolina? Big Republican registration gains. How about Pennsylvania? We spoke about it before a few months ago. Big Republican Party registration gains versus from where they were 4 years ago. So Republicans are putting more Republicans in the electorate. The Democratic number versus the Republican number has shrunk. And so the bottom line is, if Republicans win come next week, Donald Trump comes next week, the signs all along will have been obvious. We would look at the right direction being very low, Joe Biden's approval rating being very low, and Republicans really registering numbers. You can't say you weren't warned.
Not only that, but you also have the president of the United States making his garbage people remark. That's a way to motivate people to go vote and not Democrat. Between bank collapses, with more teetering on the brink, with regulators playing catch up, with high interest rates the way they are, Swiss America's been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years, and they've been warning people about a secret war on cash. If you're interested in safeguarding your hard-earned cash from this secret war, you need to get their free report. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. Swiss America can educate you on protecting your assets. In their report, The Secret War on Cash, it takes less than 15 minutes to read. It can save you on your retirement finances. All you do to get this free report is mention my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. The All-Out War on Cash includes digital forms of currency, and it's spreading. Get this report. It's completely free from Swiss America. All you do, mention my name, Eric, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Just spell out my name, E-R-I-C-K, in your message app and send it to 800-289-2646. Let Swiss America get you this report for free. Message and data rates may apply. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, happy to have you this hour. The program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you are buying a building, if you are building a building, if you're buying a franchise, if you need a heavy equipment loan and you got great credit, need to move fast, reach out to First Liberty. FirstLibertyGA.com. They make their own lending decisions. FirstLibertyGA.com. Should you wish to be on the program, or should you wish to do business with them, reach out to them, see if they can help you. All right. When we come back, there's been a firebombing of ballot drop boxes out in Washington State. I mentioned this yesterday. And people have left behind free Gaza stickers. And the police say they can't find a motive for the firebombing. Not making that up. I want to talk about that when we come back. Right now, you need to know the Supreme Court has handed Virginia a big win. I told you that I had mixed feelings about this Virginia lawsuit because the law technically says you can't purge voters within 90 days of the election. Virginia's argument was we're not purging voters, we're purging non-citizens. And under the technical reading of the law, Virginia can't do what it was doing. But it was a smart political play for Virginia to make a big deal about it, fire up the base. Well, the Supreme Court has actually today agreed with Virginia and said it is against federal law to purge people from voter rolls, but also since non-citizens aren't allowed to participate in elections, it's perfectly fine to purge them at any time. So it's a 6-3 decision of the Supreme Court. The 3 progressives said you can't take non-citizens off the voter rolls because federal law says you can't within 90 days. And the 6 in the majority said they're not allowed to vote anyway. So if we can take off felons because they're not allowed to vote and the dead because they're not allowed to vote, we should be able to take off people who aren't citizens of the United States. And so Virginia has gotten a big win today from the United States Supreme Court over this case. And I've got to tell you, keep your eye on Virginia. Keep your eye on Virginia. There's a growing body of evidence in the data that Republican early voting in Virginia is like something they haven't seen in a very long time. Republicans are not suggesting they're going to win Virginia. What they are suggesting, however, is that the way Virginia is trending, Virginia probably will help Donald Trump if he gets the popular vote, that he's going to be able to he's going to do very well in Virginia, even if he doesn't win. That's kind of wild to me. We're beginning to see these trend lines. Now, I'll tell you, the argument from the Democrats is actually we're understating Kamala Harris's support. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first, when we come back, the Secretary of State of one of the biggest swing states in the nation, Georgia, is going to join me to talk about what we can expect on election night and how they're going to count the ballots in the state of Georgia and the new procedures they put in place to get it done as expeditiously as possible. Brad Raffensperger joins me when we come back.